President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva discuss implementing Egypt's economic reform program. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi reviews the annual report on the activities of the Martyrs and Victims Honoring Fund. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov emphasizes Egypt is a leading nation and one of the largest and most influential economies in North Africa and the Arab League. You're now watching the latest updates in Egypt on Qnews. Moving on to the latest developments. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva have discussed implementing Egypt's economic reform program, which is underway in partnership with the IMF. According to presidential spokesperson Ambassador Ahmed Fahmy, President al-Sisi emphasized the importance of recent regional and international crises, which have significantly affected Egypt's dollar resources and budget revenues. President al-Sisi highlighted that the government prioritizes easing economic pressures on citizens by tackling inflation and rising prices, while also focusing on attracting investment and empowering the private sector to drive employment and growth. In President al-Sisi's meeting with the IMF, the organization's managing director, Kristalina Georgieva, expressed strong appreciation for Egypt's recent efforts and its carefully implemented reform program, which prioritizes support for the most vulnerable groups. She praised the progress in Egypt's macroeconomic indicators despite the significant current challenges. Georgieva affirmed her full understanding of the major challenges Egypt faces amid regional and global developments, noting that the IMF aims to find optimal reform paths that consider all aspects. She also noted that the goal is to protect the positive outcomes of Egypt's reforms, particularly the improvements in overall economic indicators. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has reviewed the annual report on the activities of the Martyrs and Victims Honoring Fund, prepared in collaboration with all the state agencies. During the meeting, he directed the provision of free medical services to the fund's beneficiaries, which include families of victims and those injured in terrorist incidents. President al-Sisi emphasized that the nation does not and will not forget the sacrifices of its loyal sons. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli has announced that the fourth review of Egypt's program with the International Monetary Fund will begin next Tuesday. During a joint press conference with IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva, Prime Minister Madbouli underscored the strong partnership between Egypt and the IMF, reaffirming the organization's commitment to supporting the country's economic reform initiatives. Georgieva praised Egypt's recent economic reforms, particularly the transition to a flexible exchange rate system and the reduction of previous financial burdens. She also lauded the efforts of the governor of the Central Bank of Egypt in implementing these changes. Since the Israeli assault on Gaza began on October 7th, Egypt has played a crucial role in delivering humanitarian aid, facilitating over 20,000 trucks through the Rafah crossing.
Since the onset of the Israeli assault on Gaza on October 7th, Egypt has played a crucial role in facilitating humanitarian aid to the region. The country has welcomed hundreds of aircraft loaded with essential supplies for Palestinians who are facing an intense blockade from Israel, effectively isolating them from critical resources. Egypt views the Palestinian cause as a cornerstone of its foreign policy. This approach has enabled Egypt to assert its influence on the global stage, successfully negotiating the passage of 8 trucks through the Rafah crossing to reach more than 2 million residents trapped in Gaza, in contrast to Israeli claims that Egypt is obstructing aid delivery. The reality is that the blockade imposed by Israel at the Palestinian side of the Rafah crossing is the primary obstacle preventing assistance from getting through. Currently, many aid trucks remain at the crossing, waiting to deliver supplies to those in need. Since the beginning of the conflict, over 20,000 trucks carrying humanitarian, relief, and medical supplies have entered Gaza through Rafah. This remarkable achievement reflects Egypt's genuine commitment to alleviating the suffering from the population, with Egyptian aid constituting more than 85% of the total assistance that has reached Gaza. The statistic highlights the central importance of the Palestinians' cause to both Egyptian government and its citizens. Despite international efforts to deliver aid to Gaza through alternative routes, including a temporary floating port set up by the United States, these attempts have not replaced the need for the Rafah crossing. The floating port was damaged by natural factors, leading to the suspension of its operations. Since the beginning of the offensive on Gaza, Egypt has remained vigilant regarding Israel's true intentions in its aggressive campaign against the Palestinian people. There are concerns that Israel aims to displace the population into Egypt, which Egypt has categorically rejected. The country has issued warnings against such actions, clearly asserting that any displacement would not come at the expense of the Palestinian cause or its rights.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has emphasized that Egypt, which joined BRICS earlier this year, is the leading nation and one of the largest and most influential economies in North Africa and the Arab League. Lavrov also noted that several countries are pursuing full membership in BRICS, stating that this matter will be addressed next year once the criteria for defending partner countries are agreed upon. And for further analysis on the IMF meeting and Egypt's economic reform program, we're now joined from Cairo by Dr. Mohammed Al-Bahwashi, economic expert. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us. Doctor, how have Egypt's proactive economic reforms positioned the country to navigate recent regional and international challenges effectively?
Most welcome and greeting to you all. I must say that the Egyptian state is following a very strict policy in terms of improving the economy. And there is, there is a certain sort of a juggle game between the economic policies and the social balance that is at the time we have had a problem with investment, and especially when we talk about the very basic project like projects of infrastructure related to road building and expanding the infrastructure. And had we not done these projects, I don't think we would have been even at all eligible to be joining the BRICS. And it is understandable that Egypt is trying to save every possible penny for it to increase its investment in such a forthcoming platform, especially in the light of the post-pandemic, the post-COVID pandemic, and in addition to the escalating wars that is open on several fronts in the Middle East. And so it is important to maintain the internal policies in line with the specific needs of the country, so as to give enough impetus for the country to thrive. And in the light of this, and I believe that the reforms that the Egyptian state has been following are reforms that are extremely positive, extremely promising, and we are not the only ones to praise this. International institutions, monetary, financial, and even humanitarian institutions are favoring these reforms so as to make this shows how serious the Egyptian government is in maintaining a fruitful cooperation between the various aspects of the situation, both internally and look at, for instance, the Moods and Fitch, the IMF reports that we have been witnessing, and every one of these is raising the bar, and still Egypt is catching up with this increased pressure. And I must say that the Egyptian economic policies have been able to buffer many of the negative changes that are imposed. And I must say that even, I mean, in the light of wars, whether Ukraine or Middle East wars, and I really mean wars with the plural, in the sense that it is therefore possible for Egypt to encourage investment, both internally and externally. I mean, we have, and I must say that the Egyptian government is gradually withdrawing its hand from its direct investment and leaving the floor open for private sector investment
Which brings me to my next question, Doctor. What are the steps taken by the Egyptian government to ensure that the economic reforms directly benefit citizens, particularly in addressing inflation and rising prices?
The reforms are drastic, and they have been covering each and every aspect of the daily life of citizens. And I must say that even Egyptians as citizens are really benefiting from this. I mean, there has been, of course, an increase in inflation, but yet I must say that the inflation is not only restricted to Egypt. We look at, for instance, the Russian-Ukrainian war that has been causing inflation worldwide. And this is not a novelty. These are facts that are documented, and they're far proven by many institutions. Even the federal government in the U.S. is changing its monetary policies to be able to cope with the increased pressure that, especially as you have more hot investment that have been ebbing in and out from the Egyptian state, and of course this is also creating a further increase in the dollar exchange rate. That is perfectly understandable given the main considerations of the market as is, and in many cases the assets do play a role here, and I believe that these are the main points that would allow us to offer. And I must say that there is an excellent control of the Egyptian market that is really proving that the steps taken by the government, reforms and others, even if they are far-reaching, are certainly very positive and very efficient.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed Behweshi, economic expert. Thank you very much for your valuable insights. The Egyptian parliament is set to discuss several draft laws in a general session, including the new criminal procedures law. According to the Legislative Committee report, the law aims to align with the 2014 Constitution and the National Human Rights Strategy, ensuring the highest interest of the state in human rights and procedural stability while enhancing guarantees for rights and freedoms. Minister of Foreign Affairs Badr Abdelati has said that the Supreme Permanent Committee for Human Rights, which he chairs, coordinates national efforts to promote and protect human rights in the Arab Republic of Egypt. In a speech to the House of Representatives, Abdelati praised the committee for doing its utmost under the directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to improve the human rights situation. He also praised the efforts made by Egyptian authorities to implement the national strategy for human rights. Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Political Communication Mahmoud Fawzi has highlighted several significant aspects of the new criminal procedure law discussed by the House of Representatives during the general session. In his speech, Fawzi said that the law strengthens the Public Prosecutions Authority, ensuring it has the exclusive right to initiate and manage criminal cases in line with Article 189 of the Constitution. Fawzi also noted that the criminal procedure law provides moral and psychological compensation for wrongful pre-trial detention. He highlighted that the law incorporates modern technology for trial recording and remote investigations, enhancing transparency and simplifying legal procedures to achieve swift justice, and aligns with the country's shift towards digital transformation. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we have been covering. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva discuss implementing Egypt's economic reform program. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi reviews the annual report of the activities of the Martyrs and Victims Honoring Fund. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov emphasizes that Egypt is a leading nation and one of the largest and most influential economies in North Africa and the Arab League. Well, this brings us to the end of our bulletin. Remember to stay updated by following Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews EG for the latest developments. Thank you very much for watching.